We are over halfway through our 6-part Halloweenish decorating series. Today I try and fail at a new technique and turn a spring cutter into a corny one. You read that right. It says witch's beanie. I'm switching up the narrative in this series just a tad by turning this traditional Halloween shape into somewhat of a non-Halloween cookie. I do want to follow the typical candy corn color pattern for this beanie, so out with my edible marker once more to get my spacing down. I've been a bit apprehensive about attempting the knit technique, but today I'm gonna try. Using this silicone mat has several benefits to it. I can test out the size of my icing after I cut off the tip, practice techniques easily and just wipe it right off. All of the icing mess doesn't end up all over my table. And of course, it creates a nice, consistent, identifiable background for creating these videos. I'm still not feeling super confident, but I'm committed. Most of the experts will tell you to practice a lot on a paper towel or even a fake cookie. Personally, I don't want to take the time to practice on something I don't get a reward for. When I practice on the cookies, I get to eat them when I'm done. No matter how ugly they are still tasty. I chose to use a soft peak piping consistency so that the knit does slightly melt into itself. I'm not looking for a great amount of definition as much as just a nice texture. I apologize for starting you off so much on this side shot where the definition isn't so great. Unfortunately, for the first part of this cookie, in the overhead shot, my hand is completely covering what I'm doing. The basic motion I'm using is one that creates a half heart shape, or a kind of teardrop. This is called pressure piping. Because to create these tear shapes, I first have to put a decent amount of pressure on the bag in one spot, then let up on the pressure a bit and taper the amount of pressure off as I drag the bag away from the first spot. And while I start off with the bag on the surface, I have to pull up the bag just a bit off of the surface to allow the icing to create a bit of a puffy dot. But by the time I finish, the tip of the bag is again dragging on the surface of the cookie ever so slightly. And all of this happens in just over a second, at least for this size teardrop. That is a lot to consider in such a short amount of time. And I am not finding it easy. So far, I'm not real impressed with what I've done here. In my mind, the entire surface of the cookie is covered in this knit, and you can see I have gaps. I am totally fine with the edge being a little exposed, but I don't want to see cookie in the middle. I am happy with the spacing of my colors though. If you're interested in knowing exactly how I made these colors, I cover that in part 3, Icing Cat Cookie Commentary. So what do I do to remedy this problem with my knit technique application? Well, they say, whoever they are, I still don't exactly know. Anyway, they say the only way to fail is to quit. So that's what I do, abandon ship. As soon as my hand is out of the way, you will see that I switch from the knit technique to a simple, straightforward, easy to execute pressure piped dot. It's not exactly the look I was going for, but it gets the job done. It is interesting to note how the soft peak behaves differently in this application. What I mean is, look at how the icing slightly melted into itself in the original knit bits. But in these pressure dots, you see that the icing holds its shape without any melty look and the points stay on the top of the dot. My guess is that because there is no additional messing with the icing, it stays put. That's kind of the beauty of a good soft peak. It holds its shape quite nicely left alone. But with the slightest bit of jiggle, it starts to smooth out. Interesting. I just noticed that for this orange, I apparently switched to a medium peak. even though I use the soft peak for the white. You might wonder how it is I can tell. Well, it's because of the knots tied in my piping bag. For a soft peak, I tie 1 knot in the bag, and with the medium peak, I tie 2. I can't say why I switched. It's 2 weeks later, and as I write this commentary, I just don't remember. Even though I didn't keep with my original plan, I am quite happy with how this is turning out. This isn't exactly uncommon though. I find that quite often I change my plans right in the middle of decorating. If something isn't working how you expected it to, switch up your tactics. You will see a great example of this in part 6, when I decorate the ginger mummy. I had to completely switch up my entire method. So much so that I actually leave in both complete versions of the finished cookies. I couldn't pick just one to show you. In the end, I find it way more satisfying if I try something different rather than continuing to beat my head against the wall. That doesn't mean I give up altogether. I just give up for now and try again in the future. After all, it's no secret around here, practice makes progress and progress propels. How that applies here is that while the progress wasn't made in the original design technique, I ended up with a cookie I'm completely satisfied with and is my second favorite cookie of this series. Now to my third favorite. With all of this talk about my favorites, you might be wondering which is my favorite cookie of the series. Including this bird, we have covered 8 of the 14 designs in the series so far. Well, while I know some cookie decorating content creators put their favorites up first, I have a slightly different approach. In fact, it's the same approach I use when I eat. I know many people who eat their favorite part of a meal first. I, on the other hand, always save my favorite part of a meal to the end. For example, if I make a tofu kung pao, I will eat all of the noodles and veggies first and switch back and forth between the tofu chunks and scrambled egg until I'm done. I wonder how many of you are gagging at the thought of tofu right now. I love it. I haven't been a meat eater for 18 years, but tofu I'm a big fan of. Cameraman loves it too. And while he mostly eats only what I cook, when we have pizza, you better believe he downs the pepperoni. This cookie cutter was part of an Anne Clark Flower Garden 5-piece set I bought on Amazon back in the spring. And this little bird was part of the very first series I did using most of the cutters, except he was blue. I am cringing right now at just how bad that video looks. I didn't end up releasing this decorating video. It was the very first one I ever shot, and I just could not figure out how to make it work. I did make a video after I finished decorating about how it went. But here is a perfect example of how practice makes progress, not only in decorating, but certainly in shooting videos. I have so many I just realized moments while making these commentaries. I just realized that I lied to you in a previous episode. I said that I did not have any flooding in sections in this whole series. It was apparently a little orange lie, because I flooded this little beak after the body had crusted over. Isn't that exactly flooding in sections? It is. I ask for your forgiveness. My original plan for this series was to make candy corn transfers, But honestly, on decorating day, I was just not in the mood to do them. I think one of the reasons I didn't feel like doing them is because the shapes of the candy corn on the transfer sheet that I had didn't really look like candy corn to me. So instead, for a couple of the designs, I added this detail after the flood layer crusted over. I'm using my soft peak here for a few reasons. 1, it holds its shape nicely. 2, it smooths out well. And 3, it's less likely to flatten out or dip in as it dries, meaning less possibility of what is called cratering. So why is this my second favorite cookie of the series? It's the simplicity of it. I feel very accomplished in my design and execution. I managed to get the icing right up to the edge, still using a 1 consistency outline and flood. And there is not a bit of outline showing. It's sweet looking. I guess it's a sweetie tweetie. Hey, I said it was a corny bird. See you next time for part 5.
Next time on Kuny's Cookie Chronicles.
On the menu today in this part 5 of Halloweenish, I turn one of the most recognizable Halloween figures into a girl and use my filbert brush to make some funky embroidery.